I just want you to know who I am. Yeah. Those were, that was the Goo Goo Dolls with the songs Slide and Iris. Really beautiful stuff. Yeah, I just had the opportunity to go last night to go see them play. Roseanne gifted some tickets for us all to go. So it was, for those in JC family, you might have seen the pictures. It was Darth, Joanna, Roseanne, Lila, and myself, all with phenomenal seats at this amazing band. And yeah, so thank you, Roseanne, for that. And big thanks to Goo Goo Dolls for just being who they are. Because I had, I was familiar with their music, and some of you might recognize those two songs. They're two most popular. But I had never, as most, I hadn't really dove into the lyrics until recently. And it's like, it's right there. It's just in your face. So let's take a deeper look here at the first one, Slide. Well, even just the name, even just the band name. So look at that. I mean, if there's not God all over that name, Goo Goo Dolls, it seems like a silly name, or like there's not much to it, but it's good, God, or good, it's just the same. So goodly, godly. They're a goodly, godly band. And that's all they sing about. They sing about reconnecting with that Christ within, and the awakening process and all of it. So I had a hard time choosing the song. So definitely check out more of their stuff. There's a lot of good stuff. But this first song, Slide. So Slide. I see slide is like a reference to sliding to the other side, sliding out of the physical into the metaphysical. So this is meditation. This is that stillness and moving, but not moving. You're still. So could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'd give you anything to feel it coming. So of course we can look at this from a surface level, romantic situation, and it very much makes sense from that perspective. But we can also see it from a higher perspective. Could you whisper in my ear the things you want to feel? I'd give you anything to feel it coming. Because this is like our connection with the divine is this sort of fleeting. It's not always stable, because we're not always stable. We're not always able to receive that frequency at all times. So it comes and goes for most of us. Some have yet to experience it at all, or at least to a degree. Some experience it occasionally, sporadically, and then the more we refine in this process, the more we're able to hold that. So could you whisper in my ear, asking the divine to guide us, and how the things you want to feel, how can I establish my body as this, to be ready to receive? My body, my mind, and my soul, how can I be ready to receive? Because I give you anything to feel it coming. Because it's kind of mystery. It's kind of mysterious whenever it does come. Of course, there's practices and ways and things to help refine that are important to do. But at the same time, it's mysterious. It has that, it's not something that we can like figure out and document and, meticulously define how it's done. It's a mystery. And it's got to be. It's that sense of wonder. So do you wake up on your own and wonder where you are and live with all your faults? So do you wake up on your own, wake from a sleep, but also do you wake up in this whole experience and wonder where you are and live with all your faults? So this awakening process that we find ourselves in, and then making this commitment, I want to wake up where you are, where the divine is. I won't see anything at all because it requires silence. So why don't you slide? Why don't you slide over to the other side? Really embrace that and be open to that, surrender to that. Yeah, we're going to let it slide. Don't you love the life you killed? So this is the process that we have to go through, the death and resurrection, to kill the ego, which, some don't like that phrase, because it's not that we remove the ego or get rid of it. It's actually making peace with it. But saying your services are no longer required. You don't need to be in control any longer. In fact, I'm taking over. It's not even a question. It's not even so that's quote unquote like killing the ego, is just taking it off of its automatic control. We're conditioned to have that be in automatic control. And the reason why we think it is because it's necessary for the ego to do what it does. It's the autopilot system. It's the mechanism that engages when we have sort of abandoned our duty. We've stepped out. There's no one at the wheel. So the ego steps in and protects us, protects our body, it protects our vessel, it protects this potential for soul to reside in until we're ready to take over. And if the conditioning is very deep, then that takeover can be very challenging. So that's why it's often expressed as like killing the ego, because it's a fight. Jacob wrestled with an angel, i.e. his ego, in a place called Pineal. So don't you love the life you killed? Our past, our identity, our character. The priest is on the phone. So that might be referring to, from a surface level, it's like the priest is on the phone getting you in trouble. But is it the priest is on the phone trying to dial in the divine in incorrect ways, perhaps? Your father hit the wall. Your mom disowned you. So just sort of the insanity of society, and not that there's anything wrong with our parents, but they, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. They're conditioned in that way, and it's part of our divine mission to grow past them, to step away from the parents. And same as we do with ego, we thank them for keeping us safe, for providing the potential for us to land. But at some point we have to take over. We have to take control. So that becomes part of that process as well. I don't suppose I'll ever know what it means to be a man, or something I can just change. I live around it. So I don't suppose I'll ever know what it means to be a man. We have these societal ideas that we're going to know at some point, or we're going to reach some certain status or have something. And that's what it means to be a man. That's what it means to be mature or, successful or whatever. But it's actually in the being at peace with, I don't know what it means. I don't need a status or a identity to get to, or some, so I don't need that, or something I can just change. I live around it, so being at peace with that, the wavering, the change, because change is the only constant. I want to wake up where you are. I won't say anything at all. So why don't you slide on to the other side? And I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete, little pieces of the nothing that fall. So that's the commitment. I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete, because this is the dream to be complete. And it's not that we were ever incomplete, but it's seeking to answer the question, who am I? What is this? What is consciousness? How can consciousness see itself but through this experience? How can I deepen my connection with love without feeling what love is not? So, and I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete, which is this whole experience, the falling in and out of love, the sine wave, the toroidal field, all of it, oscillating motion. And then we are little pieces of the nothing that fall. So this is the what we grow attached to, our life, our identity, what has happened, our past, our story, little pieces of the nothing that fall. And it's not to discard them. It's not to say that they're not important. They're beautifully important. They're what gives us the texture so that we can see ourselves even more clearly. But don't forget that they are just little pieces of the nothing that fall. and the nothing being the void from which all comes. And it's ultimately, you know, not if depending on how you look at it. So that's what I see here. And then May, so May, Mary, the divine feminine, that Holy Spirit, that moving energy within us. So May, put your arms around me. What you feel is what you are, and what you are is beautiful. So it's syncing up. What you feel is what you are. So it's not bringing us out of that state of separation, because you are May, you are Mary, you are the Christ. You're both. And then, May, do you want to get married? Because that's the completion of the process, is marrying ourselves with this divine influence, becoming one with it at all times. And as I mentioned in the beginning, it's challenging to maintain that, but that's the prize. That's the goal. How can I maintain that? How can I stay in a state where May wants to get married, but yes, or run away, because she's very fleeting. If we're not ready to receive her, if our body is toxic and acidic, if our mind is full of judgment, or whatever the case may be, then the circumstances are not appropriate for her to be able to stay. So do you want to get married or run away? And she will run away every time if we're not ready for her, which is the part of the love story too. You know, that sadness that comes when she leaves is what drives us to move to learn her better and fall in love with her deeper. So there's purpose to all of it. And I'll do anything you ever dreamed to be complete, little pieces of the nothing that fall. And then it repeats again. I want to wake up where you are. I won't say anything. Yeah, I think it just repeats from here. So just really demonstrating this process, showing it very clearly of connecting with May, that divine feminine movement, that energy that's, it's impossible to control. And so we cannot try to control her. You can't try and define her or put her in a box. You have to be open for her, and you have to allow her, and you have to provide the space and the feeling of safety so that she can stay. So that's that one. So why don't you slide? Slide to the other side. So yeah, that's that one, slide. And then the next one that I played is definitely their most popular, iris. And what's an iris? It's in your eye. So this is about a third eye awakening. Very fitting for the show. And it's all about that. So let's get into it. And I'd give up forever to touch you. So singing to God, singing to the divine, because I know that you feel me somehow. That connection is always there. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be. And I don't want to go home right now. So why don't we want to go home? Why would he say that? Because we're in this experience. We can return home really at any time. And it is kind of a journey home, in that we're rekindling that connection to be that closest to heaven that I'll ever be. So how can I bring heaven into this space where heaven is not the default, but heaven is our default? So we go home, and we're kind of heading towards home to bring home heaven here. But I don't want to go home right now, in that we're not to abandon this experience. That's the whole reason why we're here. So I'm not going home right now. I'm bringing home here. I'm bringing that heavenly frequency here. And all I can taste is this moment, because it's here now. It's not in the past. It's not in the future. It's not in our thoughts. It's right here. And all I can breathe is your life. 2 paths, life or death. So all I can breathe is your life, breathing the Christ. When sooner or later it's over, I just don't want to miss you tonight. This too shall pass. So what we perceive or judge as good or bad, all of it passes. So even that connection, it's still bound to the same cyclical patterns of all creation, the sine wave, the toroidal field. it moves. So sooner or later it's over. I just don't want to miss you tonight. You know, that's that love story that I'm talking about. She is going to leave. We will find ourselves in a space where she leaves. And it's sad, but that's what drives us. You know, that's what moves us. That's what inspires us. That's where songs like these come from. Sometimes they come from the heartbreak. They come from those sad moments. And it's really in that you can feel it. You can feel this song. I mean, I was starting to tear up just listening to it again, and I just heard it. Because then he breaks out into the chorus, and I don't want the world to see me, because I don't think that they'd understand. So why wouldn't he want the world to see him? Because he's awakening, his eyes opening. And I don't think they'd understand, because that's the nature of the masses and just society as a whole. It's always going to be steps behind in this process. And people break free from the masses and start entering that. But then as soon as you do that, then you're on the straight and narrow and you're sort of ostracized. So we can all know that to some degree of feeling ostracized, feeling, like we're not understood. We're not understood. So when everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. So when everything in the world is made to be broken, it's a finite, temporary experience. I just want you to know who I am. So that's that commitment to say, I recognize that I am an aspect of the Creator. I am a budding Christ. That energy is beginning to recognize itself. And so that's the commitment, is I just want you, God, to know who I am. And really it's one and the same. You are an aspect of God, learning who you are. So I just want you to know who I am. And you can't fight the tears that ain't coming, or the moment of truth in your lies. So this is the obscurity that we work through when everything feels like the movies. So when this sort of fake experience feels extra fake, you bleed just to know you're alive, just to remind ourselves. And sometimes it's necessary for us to fall, to bleed, to know we're alive, to come back. So we fall into death as long as we need to. We fall down that path as long as we need to, just to come back. And then it repeats several times in a very passionate way. And it's a great song to hear, because I don't want the world to see me, because I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. I just want you to know who I am. So yeah, that's again Goo Goo Dolls with the songs Slide and Iris. So I hope y'all enjoyed that. And welcome to another Quest-i-on. Very fitting songs, especially that one for today, because this show is centered around our awakening process, to realize that we are aspects of God experiencing ourselves. And when we remember that, then we begin to break free from the illusions of control. And it's like the same as I mentioned with the ego having a purpose. It had a purpose for its time. It was there to establish the circumstances for us to enter. Society is the same way. It held a certain frequency, provided the potential, but then when enough of us awaken, then we reclaim our land. We reclaim this space and say, you know what? Thank you for serving for that time. Thank you for providing a contrasting element. The villain, the nemesis or whatever. Thank you for playing that role. We appreciate that. But now it's time for a different version of the story. It's time for a different layer of it, for us to step back into our sovereign duty as stewards on this earth. So that's what we do here in this show, is talk about all things related to that, which is really, really all things, because there's nothing that is not connected to this process. Wherever we are, whatever we're doing, it's part of that. Even if we forget that, and we forget very deeply. We have clearly forgotten that very deeply, but it doesn't take any part of it doesn't take us away from that same fundamental reason of why we're here, to fall into the forgetfulness so that we could remember and learn all along the way. So yeah, this is an opportunity for us to gather and ask questions and see what comes up. And it doesn't always have to be questions. If you got other things to share, experiences you've gained, challenge you're facing or have overcome, or just something that you want to share with the group, this is a great opportunity and great space to do that. So if at any point you do feel like sharing, just feel free to hit that center button on your screen, and that will signal to me to open up your mic, and yeah, we'll get you in. And if your mic's already open, just find a quiet moment and jump into the conversation. It's no rush, no fight to do that. But if you do have a hard time doing that, just toggle your mic on and off just by hitting that center button, and I will do my best to see it and then call on you that way. So yeah, just some announcements here. Some of you in JC family might have seen some of Bali's posts recently. So I just want to continue reminding everyone of the needs there in that space. So Bali he runs a orphanage in Uganda, and they take care of right around just under 30 kids live there with them, but they also feed many children in the community. There are children who come by who don't have food, don't have stable homes, and he says they can't turn them away. They're not able to. And on top of that, of course, just having opportunities for the children, like, getting like a soccer ball, or getting supplies for their school or for whatever they're doing. Of course, they're always looking for extra help in that, on top of just the normal expenses. So I have told Bali, as we've got to make sure we prioritize the food, and he knows that. He makes sure that's the first priority, that's always taken care of, and even that's a struggle at times. But any additional help just goes to help better these children's lives. So if you do want to help out with that any which way, you can go to givesandgo.com/Lions of Uganda to have a direct donate link there. Or if you want to go to my page and just have a note on any contribution that you make on my page, justincarpenter.org/contribute. You can find all my links there. Just make sure to include a note or send me a message that you'd like it to go to Bali. A portion of what I do receive does go to Bali anyway. But just if you want that specifically sent, that's a great way to do that. And yeah, just appreciate anyone who does help with that. And I know finances are not the easiest for everyone right now, so I get that, and I don't want to put anybody in any stress. But if you if you can think of other ways to help out, like if you're aware of other communities or other spaces where we could talk about the needs and find other sponsors, that would be hugely appreciated. So, and I do ask Bali that to continue networking and finding others. And he does work on that, but he has not found a ton of success in that area. So any help there is greatly appreciated. So thanks for all your efforts in that. And yeah, just a reminder that I'm 100% donation supported to do what I do. I live very frugally to get by, and I really do like living that way. There's nothing wrong with that. But through your support is how I'm able to do this, because I do still have to feed myself and take care of other things. And I've loved to be here at Darth and Joanna's place for the last almost year now, and just giving them and their children new experiences and opportunities, and having extra help around. And especially now that Lila is here as well, it's just always appreciated any support. So we are, just as an example, they have never been to a movie before in an actual theater. The children have not, because they come from Jehovah's Witness, the Jehovah's Witness cult, and they have left that, and that's a whole mess in and of itself. But part of being in that was, I like to joke with them, like it seems like they forbid fun, any fun activities are not allowed within Jehovah's Witness. So they've never been to a movie. So that's on the agenda to take them to, and Roseanne actually was very generous, and she's going to help out cover those costs as well. But just to give an idea of just things to help out and give kids some fun experiences that they've never had before. So just an idea of things that I do with the funds that are donated to me. So appreciate any help there. And if you're unable to give financially, just note there are other ways. You can help out with writing notes and timestamps, or making little clips from these shows. That's super appreciated. I know that takes a lot of work. If you need help with that, let me know. If you're interested in doing that, I can get you involved with other people who have done it in the past and share some tips and tricks, and I can help out with that as well. But just any help with those kind of things is really appreciated. And if you have other ideas on ways to help out, I'm always open to that. So thank you for any considerations there. And yeah, I think that's about it as far as opening announcements for today. So we'll just jump right into the show. And yeah, as I mentioned, it's open for any topics. Anyone's welcome to jump in. I do have some offline submitted questions that I'm happy to go to, but I love to give priority to those who have taken time to be here live on the show. So if you have any questions now, feel free to raise your hand and we'll pass it over to you. So I'll just give it a moment and see if anybody wants to start us off. All right. Well, let's just jump to the first question that we have here. So I'm going back in my queue of questions. Let's see. Okay, this one was from Jessica, and she asked on JC Family, how do stars work on a flat Earth? And it's a good question. It's one that, see, the thing with the science religion, because that's really what it is it's that everything, Darth explains it very beautifully, that everything has to be proven materialistically. So everything's material. And if it's not proven materialistically, then it's not true. It's not real. So it's you're essentially cutting out all of the metaphysical, immaterial, really divine parts of creation, and you're sort of just disregarding them and throwing them away. And so the science religion is what propped up the globe, and this idea that, we've got to make up these figures and tell this bold-faced lie that we're spinning through space at impossible speeds and twirling all around and nobody can feel it, and we're stuck to this ball somehow through this magical force, and all of that, which is crazy when you like really look at it objectively. It sounds kind of crazy, but they keep us locked into that through these various proofs that require given figures and complicated equations from experts, and you wouldn't really understand it, so don't even try to understand it. And it just keeps us locked into this lie, so we're taken away from that. But my point with that is that the definitions of stars from that perspective being these burning balls of fire, millions and billions and trillions of miles away, or whatever, light years away, and it's all very scientific, and that's that. But when we lock ourselves into this perspective, this very restrictive idea, belief system, then we take away from the magic and wonder that this creation really has. So what are stars on a flat Earth? How do they work? And of course, we can come up with some pretty good ideas. And I love looking at other researchers out there like Eric Dubay and David Weiss and others who do a great job at breaking down based on observational practice how this works here. But there's always a point where it's like, okay, we've seen what we can, at least from our point of view, and then it becomes kind of mysterious, which is, from a scientific perspective, that can be maddening. But when you're open and in that state of just surrender and allowance, and you have that childlike sense of wonder, then it's magical. It's wonderful. So the nitty gritty of like what stars exactly are, I'd say it depends on what you're looking, how you're looking at it. From a material perspective, they're lights. They're lights in the firmament. The firmament moves around us. But going deeper, like as far as what creates the lights, I don't think we'll ever really know from a physical perspective. Some people like to say they're portals. They're like informational transmission points. And I like that idea. It makes a lot of sense because so much of our characteristics and ways of being are defined by the stars. Astrology is one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful study that you can do, because it defines everything. Everything's linked to that. The stars show the great story, the one story. They show us who we are, and learning about them, we see the interconnectedness of how these characteristics show up, how we become who we are. So as far as them each being a point or like a transmission point for information to come through from a divine space, that makes a lot of sense. And then the very varying configurations of these stars and the wandering stars. So they're the fixed stars in the firmament. And then there's the wandering stars, or i.e. the planets, as some people say. And the infinite basically infinite number of combinations, degrees, and points that this array can set up at any given time. So you've got your point of your borning, your birth. You've got the current time as we're experiencing it, and then the relative change between. So it's different, literally different for every single person. We have some overlap. We have some things to learn from each other, but it creates this infinitely, almost not, I want to say random, but it's almost not random, but it kind of is, in that it always keeps it interesting. There's not like a same thing that just popped out from that. So the stars and the way that they're configured and moving with the sun and the moon, which are also just lights, wandering stars that we can see just in a greater capacity, also responsible for their own set of energy and how they move through things, creates that potential for this experience to be as wonderful and magical and mysterious as it is. So defining it further past that, we certainly could, and I'm sure there are others who have done so, and I'd probably agree with some things that are said of those who spend more time studying that. But at the end of the day, like, I'm almost kind of like, what's the real need of having a specific answer on what these are? We can see their effect. We can see what's happening because of them. And it might be something that we never truly understand. And if we think we understand it to some degree, then we find and learn something else about it later that causes us to go deeper. And I think that's an exciting part of the venture. So that would be my take on how do stars work. Yeah. And if there are more specifics as far as like how they rotate and how on certain parts of the under the firmament they seem to move differently, which that happens. And Eric Dubay does a good job at breaking that phenomenon down, and it's all due to the optical illusion when you're looking at a portion of the dome spinning around you. It gives the optical illusion that they're actually rotating in a different direction. So that can happen depending, especially in the southern hemisphere or outer ring. You can see those kind of things. So yeah, but there's a lot of great work out there, as I mentioned. So check out that, and I will just leave that there for my take, and I will pass it back and see if anyone else wants to jump in either on this topic or take us any which way. All right. Well, there's another question. This one was from JJ, and she asked what my thoughts were on a video that was talking about the mud floods. So just to summarize the video, it was saying that the mud floods were the evidence that there was a major cataclysm, and from that point, much of our history has been buried, literally, but also through the lies that have been told, and the misdirections and all of that. And that's what brought us here. So we have all of these ancient structures and ruins that are incredibly ornate and very meticulous and much more difficult than we can even dream of building today. And it's like, where do these come from? And why does nobody really talk about it? Why do we just buy this facade that we somehow built these buildings with horse-drawn carriages and much less, quote unquote, technology then, as we think, than we do now? Yeah, it's ludicrous. So the mud floods, it's a fascinating rabbit hole to go down. The only thing that I differ a little bit on within the video was the assertion that, so essentially the video was talking about how the mud floods were conditioned by those who wanted to control. So the cabal, they set up the circumstances of the earth to resonate at a particular way to create the mud floods, to create the cataclysm. I differ with that in that I don't think it's necessarily man-made why that happened. I think we contribute to it, but from what I've seen, the earth has natural mechanisms built in place that if we're out of alignment to such a degree for so much time, the chaotic energy that we give off is so discordant that it creates the potential for cataclysms to emerge. And this is to inspire us to get it and do it better. But if we need a reset, then we get that as well. And some people are kind of overwhelmed by that idea of like, why would God create a space where it just gets wiped out, periodically? And it's like, I mean, that's the sort of brutal nature of this experience, and it keeps us from being being in such an evil parasitic reality. Because if we exist in that state, then the earth's like, okay, well, they've decided to play this game where they're just, torturing themselves. And so we're going to stop that after a certain point. It's only going to do that for so long. That way is temporary. The way of death is temporary. It has a death. It has an end before it starts coming back. And so this is just on a earth-wide scale. These cataclysms act as a slate cleaning, to wipe it so that we can start over. So that's where I differ from the video, in that it asserted that the mud floods were completely man-controlled. I don't think that. But I do think that the knowledge of them was known by those who sought to control, and they took advantage of it. So either they didn't do their due diligence to help warn, or and then took advantage of the fact that the earth was going to get reset. They somehow hid themselves away in reaches where the mud floods and things would not affect them. And then as soon as the earth was basically wiped, of course not completely, but for the most part it was wiped, they come back and then start rewriting history, taking advantage of that from that perspective. And so that's where the rabbit hole gets quite crazy when you start looking into Cabbage Patch Kids and these ways that they repopulated the generation of orphans, of people who didn't know who their parents were because they were bred in labs. Created a whole generation of people that were without a family. And so then you have unwitting people to lie to that don't have any other frame of reference. And they're also traumatized because they're raised by laboratories and have no loving care in their lives outside of institutions and orphanages and things. So now you have a perfectly groomed society ready to continue traumatizing, continue pushing these ways of controlling. So that's what we slipped into. That's how we got here. And that's why, like prior to the late 1800s, it gets really murky really fast. And the timeline of how long things actually existed also gets really murky. I was talking with Darth the other day, and he was saying, it wouldn't surprise him if there were 1,000 years less between now and the times of Yeshua, Jesus, just to add more distance between us and them, us and us, essentially, but to make it seem like it was farther off, and all these things that happened in between takes us further away from that potential where we were realizing who we really were, and there was this movement beginning, but they stamped that one out. So it'll be interesting to unravel. And I don't know, from a purely, again, going back to like the sort of purely left brain looking at things from a material perspective, as far as like historical evidence and things written, a lot of that's been wiped pretty effectively. So I don't know how much we'll be able to reconstruct from that perspective, but we don't need to worry because we have access to all of that. We have access to the entire catalog, the entire historical reference from God's perspective in the Akashic records. So it's all within us, though in order to access that, it does become, it's more challenging that way, because we have to connect with May, the divine. We have to connect with her. We have to marry her to see that. And then, so it'll be a fun process for us to put all the pieces back together again and figure out what actually happened. And not that it's that important. It is important for us to hopefully learn not to go through that again. But it's only as important as we want it to be. There is a purpose to the past, and reading things through it to an extent. It's helpful so that we learn, and the past and our story can also be an attachment that we get stuck to, and it becomes a limiting factor. So always having a healthy respect for studying the past and where we've come from, so that we can be here now and not wrapped up in that. So anyway, that's my take to JJ on the mud floods and what happened with all that. So I believe that's why the white hats have been so powerfully stepping in, because they know that one way or another the earth's gonna shake, and if we don't get ahead of it, then it becomes one of these great resets. And it's not necessarily man-made. It just is the natural creation and how it functions. And it's us dealing with our karma. So if we deal with our karma head on, that potential energy doesn't sink into the earth and build. But if we neglect it and we just allow our karma to play out that way, then that potential energy does build up to that point where it eventually just says, okay, well, great flood, reset time. So yeah, I'll just leave that one there, and hope that doesn't freak anybody out. But when you know that death is not real, it's simply just a opportunity to shift and move through, then none of these things seem scary or daunting. It's just kind of like a challenge to overcome. It's part of the game. So yeah, I will pass it back and see if anybody else wants to jump in on these topics or take us in another direction. Feel free. All right. Well, here is another. This one is from Philip Pirvano, and he asked, what are your thoughts about all the different people, races, languages, cultures, etc., all over Earth, and how this came to be, while we have the assumption that the evolutionary theory as it is taught at school is incorrect? So how do we reconcile these things? Well, again, it's hard because history is so convoluted. But my take on races and why we look different in different regions, I feel that that's like a part of the experience that we signed up for to make this experience more challenging and more fun. So there's a lot of, and this is part of the nefarious agenda with this woke culture, and then everyone's afraid to talk about race and, oh, I don't see color and all that kind of stuff. And yes, there's hateful racial prejudice, which is always a bad thing. To judge somebody based on their looks or anything is not ideal. So I'm not advocating for racial prejudice in that kind of way. However, to deny the various characteristics that come from our racial backgrounds is denying the colorful tapestry that God has given us. It's denying the opportunity for us to learn, okay, this is the characteristics of these people, not to put them in a box and say they have to be that way, but it's just from observation. This is how they are. I mean, we can see it from physical appearance, but it goes more than that. So if we're all learning without race as a question, we're learning our unique instrument that we're playing in this grand orchestra. We have to learn the unique characteristics of that and how it fits into the larger song and how I can play this better and tune it better and all of that. But then you throw the racial categories in there, and then it's like, oh yeah, we have the different forms of instruments that kind of play well together and play similarly. But it's not to exclude and say, oh, I want a band of only string instruments or a band of only brass or any of that. But it's like, oh no, the brass plays together, but with the whole orchestra. So it comes together as a whole. So I'm not going to deny that brass instrument is brass, but I'm going to recognize that it's different than a violin. It's a different sound. It plays differently, plays completely differently. So I'm not really going to pair it with and say, okay, you trumpet play at the same time as the violin in the same way. That just doesn't work together. No, the trumpets are going to play together, and they're going to weave in with the violin at the right time. So that's where I see the whole race thing is like, these are our structures of instruments that we're learning to play together, to say, wow, that's amazing. If you've never heard a string instrument played before, and all of a sudden you come across this whole group is like playing these instruments so well, you're like, man, that's amazing. You guys are incredible. How can we work this together and not say, oh, I'm better than you because my instrument has whatever, different characteristics in that way, but to pair them together so that they can symbiotically create. So that's my simple view of why races exist. Is it was simply just a way for God to experience him, her, ourself, but with this added not only challenge, but also extremely fun reward that we get to discover and learn. So it's like to augment that proclivity that, you know, we do have. Racial bias exists. We have that, and it's okay. It's okay to identify where we come from and how we look like, and it's okay to. It is built in. It's another part of the woke, you know, cancel culture is like you can't even talk about this, but people are hardwired typically more drawn to their own race in attraction when you're seeking to create a family. It's hardwired into us to be drawn to that. And it doesn't make it wrong or us bad for that. And it doesn't make us racist or hateful for that to exist either. It just simply is, because somewhere deep within us, we're saying it's important to maintain this beautiful experience in that way. To say, yeah, combining a trumpet with a violin and trying to make an instrument out of that, they're different. They're different. They don't flow together in that same way. So I don't even know what that would look like. And I'm not knocking anybody who chooses differently, and there's nothing wrong with anything within that. But I'm just saying that the natural proclivity of us is to have these racial differences, but to celebrate them. That's all my invitation is let's celebrate them instead of saying that they're better than or worse than. They're different, and that's wonderful. It's amazing. And it's okay that we maintain these differences so that we can each play our instrument in our categories in that way, in a much better form. So there's lots of, because if that didn't exist, then over time you would have, and that's why people put these theories out there that eventually will be just one race all over the world. And that's possible. It might be that way, but that's also why that inclination exists within us to maintain that, so that we are more attracted to those of our same race, so that sort of special part of this game is maintained. So yeah, that's it on, or that's my take on races. And then when it covers like languages, and so languages kind of stem from that. Again, there's like, you know, there's the biblical reference at the Tower of Babel as the point where the people were trying to build a tower to reach heaven, a physical tower, and it was struck down, and they were cast to all sorts of, cast to the wind. All the languages formed, and people couldn't speak to each other anymore. And, you know, it's certainly an allegory. Whether something like that happened or not, I don't know. But it's certainly an allegory where if we try and find a physical, you can't take heaven by force, but if we try and take it by force, if we try and build some creation, if we try and, you know, even today, if we try and build like an AI God that we symbiotically connect with, and that's how we're going to reach this divine state, well, that artificial way, it's always limited. You know, I'm not knocking technology and what it can do and what it can help remind us to step into, but it's a stepping stone to step further into ourselves, not to use as a crutch of like, oh, I don't have to work on this anymore because I can just climb this tower to God. So that's what happened. And then karmically, we somehow randomly got spit out into different languages. And yeah, it'd be interesting to learn, you know, actually what happened and how that occurred. But that's all we really have to reference right now is the sort of ancient stories and then speculation in that capacity. But yeah, that could also just be a layer to the fun of the experience too, is like, how can we deepen our connection through the heart without so much reliance on the sort of left brain spoken word? So how can we come back to that? Or we can fall into division and fight each other as long as we want to, until we grow tired of that, or the earth wipes us, you know, whichever, to come back to the connection. So yeah, I'd say that's my take there. And yeah. So I think that's a good spot to leave that. So great question, Philip. I will pass it off and see if anybody else wants to jump in or take us another direction. Yeah, go ahead, Darth.
I could just add something briefly. We can sometimes learn about ourselves through the eyes of our enemy. And it would be necessary to do that because we've been alienated from ourselves. As you were mentioning in your discussion about the mud flood, our entire world has basically been kidnapped. So every race in the entire world is basically a kidnapped race. And we're uncertain about where we come from. The one thing that we can tell in this entire orphanage of kidnapped children is that some of us look like each other and some of us must obviously be related to each other. But as to what the nature was of our original cultures, all of that is a mystery. However, we have managed to capture some of the writings of our common enemy. And the things that our enemy writes about us is very revealing. Our enemy does not want us to act in the interest of our own race. Whatever race it is, and whatever color you are, and whatever part of the world you think you come from, our common enemy does not want us acting in our own interest. And acting in our own interest is actually very, very good. And acting in the interest of our family, whether it be our immediate family, our extended family, or even our national families, these are all very good things. Just because we're acting in our own interest does not mean we're acting against the interest of the other children who are in this massive prison orphanage that we call Earth. And so everywhere in the world, there's a very peculiar thing that none of us are wearing the clothing of our original family. Everywhere in the world that modern Western civilization has captured, everyone's wearing jeans and everyone's wearing t-shirts and nobody wears what our family originally wore. And no one speaks the language of our original families. And yet everyone's consumed with racism. And we didn't do this to ourselves. This was something that they taught to us. And the other thing that, if you look at the writings of some of these evil people, there's an idea that they constantly hammer into us, and the idea is diversity. They say diversity is strength, and that if you're against diversity, well, then you're racist. But when you look at the writings, when they say diversity, what they really mean is dilution. So when you look at when you look at with any sort of technical skill or any sort of artwork, like say you're making a painting, right? You're trying to draw an image. All of the colors have to be distinct. The reds have to be red. The greens have to be green. The purples have to be purple. All the colors have to look like what they are. But if you take all the colors and mix them together, you just get a smudged gray, right? And you can't draw anything with that. That's not, the beauty is then destroyed. And that's what they're trying to do to us. They are trying to mix all of the races together through diversity and through this concept of racism, so that all of us lose our unique strength. So white people have a unique perspective and a unique strength that is useful in our common war against evil. Black people have a unique strength, a unique perspective, a unique attribute that is uniquely relevant and special and useful in our common enemy against evil. And it is the same with every national family in this world. However, the elite evil people do not want us to identify as our national families, anything but that, because It's family versus anti-family. And before we can help anyone else, we have to help ourselves. And the other thing that they're doing is they want us all under one roof. Excuse me. So, um, so like if you have a home and you have daughters, you don't want non-familial males living under the same roof as your daughters because you're trying to keep your daughters pure, right? But that's not what they want. They want all the national families mixed with no borders so that you can't protect the children. And it's not that the other races are evil. It's just when there's no borders and when there's no security and when there's no individuality, then you can't protect the future. And then all the colors get mixed and then they lose their power and then we can't unite as our individualistic national families against evil. So sometimes you can learn things that we don't know about ourselves by reading what our enemies have to say about us.
Yeah, that was so well said. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation for sure. And yeah, but as you so simply pointed out, we can, while we don't know how we got here and what happened exactly, we can see the current agenda, which is that. And if we know society has been constructed by those seeking to control, seeking to do evil, then there's got to be a reason why, and we go the other direction. So thank you for that. And yeah, I saw Jeff raise your hand. Go ahead, brother, and then we'll go with Rowan after that. Thanks, guys.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear. Go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I guess it kind of ties in. Do you think, like, I guess it started with like painting on rocks, and then actual paintings and drawings, and then the camera came out, and you know, do you think previously they had this, or was God waiting for us to have, like, for the digital age that we have now, like the internet? Does it have a lot to do with our ascension, like for us to like learn? Because I would assume like all these, like pre mud flood or whatever, these people would have had a hard time, you know, making sense of anything with no way to, you know, communicate around the world. So do you think like the digital age, or the internet even, has a lot to do with us, you know, moving forward or ascending, or however you want to put it? Like, how would you square that box?
Yeah, it's a good question. And, you know, this is just speculation, but I'd imagine that during those times we didn't need pictures or film or things of that nature, because we could tap in on a more ethereal level. So transmission, the Ethernet, you know, transmission didn't require any network or internet to do that. It didn't require any digital capturing or anything of that capacity, but it was just simply a raw, pure transmission of the here and now, knowing that time and space aren't limitations. They're simply just parts of the experience, but they can be moved past. So yeah, that's my take there. And then what I see is like a beautiful way that this story is unfolding is like we fell and we lost those abilities, and through that we've created these other mechanisms like photos and then film, and then that's what's allowing us to tell stories in a way that we do, you know, to have the film, the movies, the shows, the books, the pictures, all of that came from that. You know, so we that's the sort of necessary purpose of the contrasting character, the villain, the Antichrist. You know, it provides us with a contrasting element so that we fall, but through the fall we discover different and unique and new ways to express. Because this really, what it all comes down to is just us learning how to create and see ourselves and create new scenarios so that we see ourselves from different perspectives. And how fascinating and amazing is for us to come into this space where we're able to create these amazing movies. And yeah, maybe at one time we could connect in that way etherically, but I don't know if the same sort of vivid portrayal would have looked exactly the same for everyone. So depending on your level of attunement, you would be able to tap into that. Say someone who was telling a story, you'd be able to tap into it in that way. And perhaps in some capacity, it was even more vibrant if you were able to. However, this medium of film gives the potential for everyone, no matter where they are, to tap into that same frequency that that creator was putting out. So it's just it's another fun way for us to tell the story, you know. And even spoken word is it's very archaic, it's very clumsy, it's very hard to get across at times. It makes a very challenging way to communicate, where it gives the potential for deception and all of that. But also through spoken word comes poetry, comes song, comes these incredibly creative ways to take these commonly held forms of symbols that we call letters and structure them together in this way that it becomes like a pleasing flow that we can all recognize and tune into. So the way that the song lyrics are formed, or the poet writes, or the speaker speaks, it just becomes that fun way to use what we fell into as sort of like what we might have perceived as a negative thing, to step away from our divine potential. But through that journey, we've come out on the other side with a whole, a whole arsenal of fun tools to play with in spoken word. So like the English language, debatable on where it comes from, and was this created as a tool for the cabal, or was this created as a tool for us to unite? Probably both. You know, it probably is both. But what comes from that? Yes, there are downsides to that, but there's also the huge upsides of giving English being the most diverse language on ways to express things, saying the same thing, but you can weave it in many different ways, as opposed to other languages where it's much more simpler. You can't really diversify as much. So then that gives the complexity of all the music and lyrics and things that come from it that are ultimately expressing the same thing, but it might sound so much better when it's spoken this way. So yeah, that's what I see as like the sort of reason for that. Not that there really was a reason. This is just kind of a happenstance that is beautifully coming together. So I hope that makes sense. But I'll pass it back to you and see what you have to say there.
Yeah, I know, it's so fascinating, and it's so, you know, great to. I love looking at old pictures, and like old pictures with old families. You know, they're all sitting up, and there's hardly ever any smiles. They they look miserable, but I'm sure you know, it's like taking a driver's test now. Like, don't smile. It's such a contrast to the way we, you know, take pictures now. But yeah, I just love looking at old pictures. There's so much to be said there. And yeah, the communication thing, like even with our cell phones now, like I swear I lived a life that, you know, we, you know, communicated telepathically, or we just knew what each other was thinking. Because like I hate texting, because I feel like they invented texting to like slow us down. There's one thumb, like takes forever to text. Like when I had my old BlackBerry back in the day, you know, like give me a keyboard and I can really give her. But yeah, it's so complex, all the different things. But yeah, what an interesting interesting topic. But yeah, thanks, Justin.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And thanks for the great question. Yeah, I saw Rowan, you raised your hand. What's up, brother?
Yeah, hey Justin, hey everybody. Yeah, this is a very fascinating subject because, yeah, the whole thing about mixing everyone into one race I've heard about a few times as well. And my girlfriend is Mexican, I'm white, quote unquote, whatever. And it's the whole thing about racism, I think is pretty stupid because I think we know it's something created to like divide us. But yeah, I've wondered about this because I don't have any children yet, but I know that things like, say, autism and all kinds of other disorders are caused by likely metals or parasites passed on by either the mother or father or both, blah blah. Like all kinds of things, right? Like we've narrowed that down, but I have wondered about different races or skin colors mixing together and something else like that could happen, or other types of, what would you call them, like mutations or some type of thing like that, because there's plenty of people walking on the earth that they are mudbloods just as much as I am. I'm just a white mudblood, right? So it's like it's I know the gray color, that the mixing of all the colors was such a great example, because then there's no individuality, there's no identity anymore. And I've seen so much of this communist artwork, and in Vancouver here in Canada we had a wave of it, and I think there's even still some of it kicking around on the seawall, where they're just these really ugly looking kind of stick figures, or very just grotesque looking animated, or not animated, but depictions of animated beings, and they just look weird and just all the same. And there's usually pairs or groups of them, like two or three, sometimes four or five statues. And I'm sure some of you have seen it if you've been through the park. Like there's that one in English Bay. That one's pretty cool. That's unique. It's been there for a long time. I don't think that one's weird, but there's these other ones that we've had, and we've even had things like, it's like mixing. It's not just the races mixing together. It's like trying to blend art and music and everything into this like noise, or this like bland, like bleh, like stupid splash on the canvas type of painting that they call it art, the woke art, right? The woke mind virus has been in everything, and it's kind of funny. I'm trying not to laugh at it because it's very true, right? And yeah, so when it comes to races, because like I think it's probably, you can definitely say you're not racist if your partner is not from where you're from. So that, I like how it dispels the arguments of these woke, not trying to be judgmental, but idiots that just keep closing their ears and their eyes to the fact that we're the very people trying to help them. And some of us have partners that are not even from our own countries. And so I'm trying to figure out, like, what would happen if I was to have a child with someone who's from not where I'm from. And everyone goes through some stupid racist crap in their life, like very dumb, right? Like all relatable. We could almost say they're the same stories, just different places at different times. And I don't overthink things, but I think this is what good fathers would do, and I'm not even a dad yet, is what would my kid go through if, this knowledge of all this stuff is coming out? They're going to be growing up with it even more than like I did. And I just started to learn, about all these things right when I was about 18 or 19. So I'm just trying to paint like a window or a picture in my mind of like, what would a child's life look like, no matter if it's mine or others? How would they experience growing up and then learning that it's like, oh, they're not supposed to, like, their mom and dad shouldn't have ever met because they're from different places, and it causes problems if they mix together. And we see, fine examples of this happening, like everywhere where Islam goes, or like whatever is like anything outside of Islam is the world of war. It's like World of Warcraft to these fuckers, pardon me. But, yeah, that's how they look at it. And so there's fundamental issues. Like even Japan is starting to be very forward with how they don't want migrants of anywhere really becoming part of their culture, or trying to, what's the word? Adapt or integrate. Yeah, the fancy little politically correct word is to integrate into society. But I'll let the mic go there, because I think that's enough information to, yeah, round off my question is, yeah, like, is it a good idea to have a child with someone who is not from where you're from? And you don't necessarily have to have a child, right? There's so many children that need to be adopted, and like there's, I'm not trying to overthink all that, but yeah, like what do you guys think? Who has children? Like I would like anyone to speak up who has, a partner that's not from where they're from. Please, I'd love to hear. I think we'd all like to. How's their life been? I'm not trying to be all nosy. I'm just very curious. And thanks, guys. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Thanks for the question there. And yeah, at the end of the day, I would say there's never going to be an answer that's right for everyone, right? Like that's the fun part of this experience is like we can notice general trends and patterns, but then we each have our own unique individual lives and where our heart's drawn to, and you can't, love is not always logical or any of that. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with having a child with anybody. So I want to make that clear. Like I'm not advocating that we should be looking down or whatever on couples of different races having children. Like that's perfectly okay. But we can see the larger agenda in that kind of stuff as well. So once we become aware of that, then the nuances and the things that happen are simply natural. And there are plenty of opportunities where the divine moves through people to have like a Romeo and Juliet encounter, where that through that relationship it helps to break down barriers and not to, like, it's a balance, right? Because we don't want to go to this homogenizing where everyone becomes this wash, but at the same time we don't want to be so disconnected that we're like in this constant tribal warlike state either. It's like recognizing and celebrating our differences for that, not to use them to fight each other. So yeah, I can't I'd say if you feel called, absolutely go for it, and I'd give you all my blessings to move forward in that way. Like there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. This is more just generally speaking on the larger like the larger experience and how this has been pushed onto us and whatever happens because of that. And yeah, but it shouldn't restrict or limit anybody's perspective or what they want to do or who they fall in love with or how that comes to be, because I think that's such a beautiful, mysterious, magnificent part of her. She's that movement, she moves us and we can't ever really understand her. She's going to move us in those ways that don't make sense, and things happen in ways that were not super clear at the time, but it can become clear later, and sometimes we don't see it until we're viewing it from the beyond and seeing it from that high perspective. So I can't yeah, I don't have anything more to offer you. I mean, of course I'd be happy to hear from anybody else if anyone has any more thoughts on that, but yeah, I would just say just follow your heart and go where it leads, and yeah, that's that. So I'll pass it back.
Yeah, I'll definitely pass it open, and anyone else wants to add to this, I think it's a really good conversation. Yeah, thanks, guys.
Hey, this is Lila. Hi, everyone. Well, I'd like to say something about this, which is that I really bow down to the energy of conscious conception. And so this idea that we are welcoming the spirit in consciously and creating, participating in the creation of children from that sphere is just so beautiful and healing, and as it really is meant to be. So when I heard your question around that, I was thinking about that, and as a mother who has been working with motherhood, I just wanted to say that I think that that's the most important. I feel in my heart that that's the most important, that if you're considering, becoming a parent, in that realm, in the realm of actually like parenting children, to to check in and feel within yourself as to if that is right for you, and then going into that space from there. I don't think that uh, skin color, all of these other things are as important. When we have the freedom to consciously create with God, it will be the right situation, is basically what I'm saying. And when whether it's from our own cerebral intelligentsia place, or from like a controlled reality of other beings either saying, integrate or don't integrate, or whatever the story is, it's like it's such a different energy, right? So when God's moving through you, that's not even going to be a question. And it will feel right either direction that you go, right? So yeah, that was just kind of where I got led when you were stating your question, and I would just like to bring that into the conversation, just that awareness and that presence of being in the now, and letting that energy move through you, and you'll know what's right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lila. Thanks for adding that. I would agree 100%. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you, Lila. That was really nice. Yeah, very nice. But yeah, so I mean, I guess I don't have anything else to add to it. This is just a good one to ponder on for a while, right? So thanks, everyone. And yeah, I'll pass it along.
Oh, I also just wanted to add another part of that. There's actually an amazing book called Conscious Conception. It's by an old school herbalist midwife type woman named Janine Parvati, Parvati, I think is how you spell it. And it is just mind blowing. Her and her husband wrote it together around consciously conceiving, and yes, in the physical realm, but also spiritually, etherically, etc. And it's incredible. So if anyone's listening to this that feels moved to study that, in whatever phase of life you're in, you could be in your crone state of life, but if you feel moved to look at that, it's incredible book. Thanks.
Yeah, I wrote that one down. Yeah, it's good. Sweet. There's so many good books out there. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lila, and thanks for the great question, Rowan. And yeah, I will just pass it off and see if anybody else wants to jump in, either on this topic or take us a whole new direction. Feel free. All right. Well, here is a question from Olaf. I always love his questions. And this one was around sleep. So he has a few, but like, what are my thoughts on sleep? What do we need it? Is sleepy? Yeah. What is sleep and why do we do it? So this is a fascinating topic to go into, and there's stuff you can find, and there are people who are playing with this, but just in this idea that we don't necessarily always need sleep, that sleep is just simply something that we do now, and we do need it now. I mean that, yeah, but in higher forms of stasis within the body, this might be something that we don't need as much and potentially at all after a certain point. So what does sleep do for us now? We can, and we can see this. They've done experiments where people have died from lack of sleep. That is possible. And my view on sleep is that this is a time for us to go into absolute rest, so our body can do what it needs to do, so our mind can compartmentalize and organize what it needs to, and our whole being can kind of sync up. It can synchronize. So that's what I see the purpose of sleep right now, and why it's so necessary that we do it when we're in that place. However, I do think that once our body is cleaner, and once our mind is less cluttered, and once our environment is less traumatizing, and once our reality is just more stable, I think we'll start shifting away from sleep, where we'll need less and less and less of it. But this is also something that doesn't, well, if you feel called to experiment with that, like, go for it. I know for me, I'm really trusting of my body to let me know how much to sleep. And I know that I'm still very much in a state to where if I don't get enough sleep, like my quality of life starts to decline pretty noticeably. My focus, my mental clarity, my moods, all of it starts to go downhill very quickly. And this is another area where human design is very helpful in sort of learning our different relationships with sleep. It's not always, well, I'm sure somebody like Lila would know how to explain that even better, but I know that there are definitely some details around human design that indicate sleep is more necessary for this individual, and this is why this individual can go on and on without as much sleep. And yeah, so that's a factor of it as well. Lila, I don't know, do you want to speak on that just real quickly? If not, that's no worries, she might be busy. But yeah, so we get to this point, I see, once we have gotten to a more stable space to where this time of deep rest, relaxation, it's essentially meditation. You're going in and out of the dream space because the metaphysical, ethereal realm, the wall between us is weakening while we're in that state, because we're in such a state of relaxation. We're fasting, we're not eating anything, so our body's not having to digest anything extra, although there's still stuff in the system most of the time. So it's still having to deal with that, but at least it's not getting extra things to have to process and deal with. So then it can devote more time to healing and getting things together. So yeah, it's very necessary right now. But I do think that eventually we will, we won't need as much. And that could look like, oh, I just need to rest. I need to go rest for 15 minutes, and that could equate for a whole night of sleep, potentially, potentially getting to that point. Yeah, so I think that's the gist of his question. He was saying, so he said, my human design is a manifester, and manifestors have time spans where they need a lot of rest, and on the other hand, periods of time where they attract everything and can do things all day long. But maybe it's more behind the sleepy, lazy period, or is it my decision only? So yeah, so he's looking at his human design and how that translates into sleep cycles and times where we might be more drawn to sleep, and that makes sense from a manifestor's perspective, because they have that like tunnel vision, especially when they're in the process of really manifesting. They have that narrow focus and that drive to like really bring it to light. And in an ideal scenario, that's the pass off to the manifesting generators to continue like really starting it, pushing that energy into the space, the generators to complete it, the projectors to guide the overall process, and the reflectors to kind of like determine the health of the project and the environment and the community. So that's kind of like the ideal model of a human design cohesive symbiotic environment. So it would make sense from a manifestor perspective that if there is that divine influence moving through, they're kind of like the tip of the spear of like creative potential. So they have that need to drive forward. So that would make sense why there would be less of a call for sleep when they're in that state. But just like everything is a sine wave, it's a cyclical nature. There's going to be patterns where perhaps that divine influence to manifest is not as strong, and that's the recovery time. That's the time where sleep would be more apt, and that's more something to do. I know for myself, like if I don't sleep as much for a couple nights, I have to, in order to balance out, I have to have a long one to sort of shift back out of that. So it's definitely something I've noticed. And yeah, I think that's about it as far as his question. But I will pass it off and see if anyone else has any thoughts on sleep or wants to take us any other direction. Hey, Teresa. Go ahead, sister. It's good to see you.
Hi, Justin. I'm going to change topics, I guess. I have a question about baby formula. If a mother's not going to breastfeed, is there anyone on here who has good information on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would certainly love if there are more experienced mothers who could speak up to that. But as far as what I've learned from Dr. Morse suggests using coconut milk as a formula until the baby can eat fruit, and then shifting to fruit. So, you could use like, soft fruit where they could consume once they're old enough. I've heard people using goat's milk. If you're going to use a milk from an animal, goat's milk is the closest to human milk that we can get readily. So you could use that to supplement. I wouldn't trust any store-bought formula. I mean, maybe there exists. I don't have any experience there other than knowing that the garbage they sell in regular stores is horrible. But maybe there exists some good stuff out there. I don't know. So yeah, that's about all I have to offer on it. But I would love to hear if anyone else has anything to add to that. Any experienced mothers or someone who's learned about that process, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, thank you. I know the Infamil formula makers send out coupons and for all their formulas, and these young parents get off track. And
Yeah, exactly. And that's why that was pushed so hard, is just as another severance point. If we can be severed from our mother's breast, then that's one less connection point that we have. And we just become this discordant, little being fed this garbage that's halfway nourishing us, but not really. It's halfway poisoning us as well, and really starts us off on a bad note. So it makes sense why they do that from that perspective. But that's unfortunately all I have to offer in that area. But we'll oh, go ahead, Lila.
Sorry. I was just gonna say that it also creates all this dysfunction from early on, right? This I don't know about other people on here, but I know that when I was born, there all the formula, quote unquote, was basically like milk mixed with high fructose corn syrup. And there's also a birth control pill at the time that hadn't been deemed safe for breastfeeding, probably wasn't. But so many mothers in the 70s didn't breastfeed, partially because it was seen as dirty or, lower class or something like that, but also because of this birth control, right? That a lot of the feminists were like, oh yeah, of course, I want to control this, right? So yeah, I think it's directly led to some of the dysfunction in my body for sure. And having, just setting us up, especially for the whole high fructose corn syrup debacle that many of us are living through or dealing with the after effects of. So, but yeah, I just wanted to say about that, what I've seen most of my clients, doula clients and bodywork clients, and I work a lot with intracranial work, etc., for newborns, and what worked with my own son was actually a combination of raw organic coconut water in a 1-to-1 ratio with goat milk, actually, raw organic goat milk, straight from the goat. And that, if you do have to supplement, it would be ideal if you don't at all, but if you do, then that would be the way to go if there's any way possible. But do be careful, because goat milk, has sort of been like, oh yeah, that's the thing to do. And so now they've made all these goat milk formulas, but those are just as terrible. And they have a lot of hidden ingredients in them. So, try to find somebody who has goats, is raising them holistically, if you must do that. Yeah, and feel free, if anybody has more questions about this, you're welcome to message me. I have like files and files on homemade formulas and those kinds of things if you must. But, the ideal would be to look at your own diet and go in and, again, we've talked about it before, but I'll just mention it again. The Irish sea moss is, if you're vegan or vegetarian or, limiting flesh products, etc., wherever you are on the spectrum, the Irish sea moss is going to be one of the best things to switch over with and have all of those amazing minerals that you need, especially if you're trying to produce breast milk. So be sure that you're getting that, and other holistic things like real coconut milk, real coconut meat, those types of things can be really helpful. And then there's a ton of herbs like fenugreek and other herbs that you can be taking internally to make sure that you're getting enough of what you need so that you can produce to feed your baby naturally and holistically and the way God intended, right? Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Lila. Really appreciate that. Yeah. Did you have any more thoughts on that, Teresa?
Oh, no, that's some great suggestions. Maybe I should get a hold of Lila. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And thanks, Lila. Yeah, great question. So yeah, I will just pass it off and see if anybody else wants to jump in, either on anything we've discussed or take us in a whole new direction. Feel free. Hey, Tracy. Go ahead, sister.
Well, hello there. Hi, everybody. So I'm going to go back to, I think it was Olaf that had the sleep question. I think that was who it was. I'm not sure. I was kind of doing something. Okay, great. Okay. So I'm going to share my experience. Okay. yeah, being a manifester as well. So that was interesting to hear what you were saying about that. In terms of how, for myself, being focused on getting something done and pushing myself through certain projects, if you will, looking back at my sort of past sort of patterns of activity and sleep. But yeah, I can see where I've never been consistent. I don't really recall ever having consistent sleep my whole life. But I believe that my physical circumstances in terms of my location, if you will, because all through my formative years, from like kindergarten on, my parents lived out of my school, the jurisdiction of my schools, where you could actually legally go. If you're out of the zone, you couldn't go to that school. So my grandparents did. Excuse me. My grandparents did. So I would then stay with them. And then, sports schedules and very early practices, starting from very early, like grade 3. What are you, like 7, 8 years old? So I had a pretty active elementary years, really active. And I don't recall like feeling like, oh, like I'd be tired and sleep. It was just a normal thing. Of course, you don't think about those things back then. These things weren't discussed so openly, where we were analyzing our lives like this in great detail. But anyway, but just to look back on and see, as I was listening to the conversation, thinking, okay, well, is it just my circumstances physically? Because factors, recently I've moved, or my experience here in Hong Kong. There's been like quite extreme and consistent upheavals that have gone on, that caused like a lot of disruption in my life, my life with Eddie here. And I first then started to get insomnia, very first when I first moved here, because there was some extreme things that happened. There was like my father died. We got robbed while I was away. With my father and burying my father. So I was with him in hospice. I was able to be with him, but came back, found out we were robbed. It was gone. A whole bunch of stuff was stolen. We had just moved to Hong Kong, didn't have insurance, and then shortly after that, we got screwed over by our landlords, like really bad. Then sued. And there's just a whole bunch of crazy stuff happened that was sort of beyond our control. Well, it was, but still, these things were quite extreme and changes and stuff like that. So my sleep patterns really got affected then, to where I wasn't able to sleep. The insomnia part kicked in. So I had lived up until then being very, very, able to go for long periods, working very hard, like physically very hard, and going for long periods of time on very little sleep. And yeah, quite amazingly so. So, like just currently here, I'll just speak of sort of more of in the now, moving to a brand new environment and having experienced the accident, well, actually a few accidents, and just trying to get settled into a new space, and the physicality that's needed to maneuver, moving stuff around, all the cleaning and stuff like that. So I haven't really been able to sleep, like literally 99% of the time. I've not slept here. It's been really rough, like the roughest ever. I've gone through a lot of different injuries in my life and stuff. This isn't like the worst injury, but it's just been this pattern that sort of everything, that kind of perfect storm, if you will, that hits all at the same time. And so the sleep has been so elusive. But I have been, that's sort of a negative aspect that I've been dealing with here. But the positive is that it is what I mentioned before, is such a peaceful place. But it's so quiet. There's no road noise. There's no construction noise. I mean, some stuff really far off, but not really. And it's just such a quiet spot. I can't even make any noise myself. So I've had to go into sort of a forced what's that called when you did your silent retreat thing? I forget what that's called. But I feel like I've had to do that. Like I've had to go silent because I'm living above my landlord as well. So I haven't had this sort of close contact with people where they, my every move and every noise that I make, they can hear if we've got windows open. We're in such close, proximity. So I've not, I've tried to be really quiet and stuff, and so as well not playing music. So I've gotten into the stillness kind of by force, but it wasn't something like yourself. You went off to do it with this pure intention of what you were doing. Well, this is pretty much how I roll through life, I guess. That this is how the circumstances happened that forced me into situations. And there's stuff that I've gone through, stuff that I thought about. I did a lot of reflecting. I was thinking about stuff. And even one thing was that in the accident, even though I blame the taxi driver because he was at fault, but still I kind of broke my golden rule. It was like, what can I do to avoid the situation again? And it is extremely treacherous here. I will keep reiterating that because it's actually kind of has become a bit terrifying even in certain conditions. Like I just won't go out. I can't risk falling again or crashing again. And the conditions of the sidewalks, roads and whatnot, the rain, the mossy slipperiness and stuff. It's really treacherous for me. And because just being injured, I lost my confidence as well. And I injured myself a little bit worse than I thought initially because then things started to settle, So my back, hip, knee, other various, hands, shoulder, blah, blah, blah. Everything sort of that got jarred in the fall, So that kind of losing the physicality, losing some strength, losing confidence as well. So all of it is sort of, it seems worse probably. It certainly feels worse than it's probably sounding like. It's not. I'm not really going to anything that bad, but without the sleep, like you said, I've been extremely emotional. So I've been like, kind of. I wouldn't, I don't know. Frustrated, and even getting into bitterness. So I had to check myself there. Like I really was. Yeah. Because I'll say again, I was being so quiet and doing so much sort of, it wasn't necessarily, I was just trying to be as restful as possible. I was just trying to rest my body because I was wanting to get on with things here. And I couldn't really move anything around. I couldn't really do anything. I was feeling quite fragile and, but getting more and more frustrated because of the lack of sleep. That is such a, like feeling like I was actually becoming not insane, but becoming out of control, and getting into like a negative, an unhealthy level of like feeling like starting to feel bitter, starting to feel resentful of various things, and so just trying to looking at why and looking back to certain patterns that I've done, as in the past, in past relationships even, but just the lack of sleep is such a huge thing that people, if they don't experience it for more than a few days, I've been experiencing it for actually years. It sounds like I'm kind of exaggerating. I say I've literally for decades, since my car accident and since I hurt my neck, I've had physical pain type of sleeplessness and irregular sleep patterns because of that. It has gone on. It's been consistent. It's a consistent thing that fluctuates with various things, various factors, but it's been consistent for decades. And then I had to sleep beside somebody who snored really bad. So that really affects your sleep patterns as well. That has nothing to do with something you can control. So all these things, all these factors I've had to battle. I really have had to battle, and I try to hone in on what I need to do to try to get that restful sleep. So just recently, like I said, just being here, being able to be in this peaceful place, it is very quiet. It is like the perfect opportunity to do this, but I wasn't able to. I was just in so much pain, and there's thunder showers, and I don't have any AC. It's like 35 Celsius at night, 100% humidity. The pigs are squawking at night, kind of fighting and stuff out there. Anyway, but the ambiance of it all is it's really crazy. I absolutely feel like it's this weird new chapter of all these unknown things, and I'm completely uncomfortable. But like you spoke about, you have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and facing those new things, and so it's been a lot of that. So when I try to have a nap, recently I was trying to avoid it to try to get on a sleep pattern of being able to be up at certain times to get back on a type of a workout, because I had to get off of that. I wasn't able to walk up and down the hill. I couldn't even walk up and down stairs properly. So for quite a while. So I'm just wanting to get back to a certain pattern of getting up before sunrise, doing those kind of things, getting back into a routine. And it's very, very hard to do when you cannot get consistent sleep. But I did bank 3 hours yesterday at 6 a.m. because I've been trying to wake up in the middle of the night. So, and I'll get up for a few hours, go back for an hour, up for a few hours, go back for an hour. It's really just quite like all over the place. But I had a really good 3 hours it can be deep enough and a reset enough sometimes, which, I haven't had a good night's sleep since I've been here, really, like maybe one, but not even a full, like 7 or 8 hours. I've gone on maybe 4 hours of shit sleep a night where I wake up every hour in a lot of pain. So it's kind of, I don't know. I feel like I'm turning a corner right now. So this kind of came up and I was able to share because it has been something on my mind, but I haven't really wanted to even share it with anybody else. It's not something, I don't know. It can sound like I'm complaining or something, or when it's just sort of sleep. Well, just go get some sleep. We'll just, take it easy and go to bed early, or, most people have sort of simple suggestions, and it's something that's a lot, can be quite difficult for some. For most, I don't believe it is, which that's wonderful. And, but when it's something you really struggle with, it really seriously affects so many parts of your life. So and that takes a lot of energy to try not to allow that. So and then you're already in such an exhausted state, but trying to battle all these different things in states of exhaustion, it absolutely has built into me, a certain type of survival mode that sometimes I can be even impressed by myself a little bit and go, wow, okay, well, you actually made it through that. Especially some of the moves, like the physicality of what I had to do and the length of time and duration of it and all that. I was able to overcome it. So I can, I can feel some success at some point, but still, I just really hope that August will bring some rest, and any prayers sent my way for some sweet, peaceful dreams would be very appreciated. So that's my very, very long share. Thank you for listening. I love you all very much. Think about everybody all the time. I haven't been so good on keeping up with the comments and emojiing and responding and stuff like that. My fucking computer's all fucked up. I can't even hold my phone. I'm just like not feeling well enough to. So I haven't been as active. So my apologies there. But yeah, I love you all so very much.
Thanks, Tracy. Thanks for sharing. And yeah, we're so glad to have you any which way. And I didn't feel your presence missed at all. But of course, yeah, take all the time you need. If rest and recuperation is so important to do. And that's like the I don't know, the danger or risk of talking about sleep and not needing it, or different levels of where we are and what we're doing, is that we can judge ourselves for those moments where we're really called to rest. And that's only going to be us that can know that when we're being led to do that. And like you've had circumstances happen in your life where it's brought you to more stillness and silence. And so it's all very purposeful in that. So anyway, just wanted to say we love you and happy to have you here. And we'll be sending some goodness your way, and let us know if there's anything else we can do for you. And just appreciate hearing from you. So I will pass it off and see if you or anyone else wants to jump back in. All right. Well, there is another question from Olaf, and he's working with somebody who's big into energy healing. And she told him, he was asking about a friend of his that he feels drained around, and asked her about this. And she replied, your friend has no soul. This might sound spooky to you at first, but it isn't. Most people are soulless, but it simply means they have a different form of consciousness. Nevertheless, you should decide for yourself whether the contact is good, because it is definitely manipulating, specifically in your case, the root chakra and mental field. So he was just asking, have I ever heard something like this before, specifically around not having a soul and what that means. So yeah, I've certainly heard people say that. I don't really ascribe to soulless. I see it all as a spectrum, right? Like you've got a knob that you can turn, and that knob has 0 to 100 on the dial. And I feel like the point of this experience is to be turning that dial up so that we're increasing and what that dial represents, what that figure represents, is our potential for soul, for Christ, for this divine essence, consciousness, to inhabit our being and to create and view and observe through us. So that potential on some people is high and is growing. I'd say everyone here is growing their potential to allow more of that consciousness to enter into their being. Some people are very low, but from my eyes, it's never non-existent. It's never that someone has lost all ability for consciousness to enter their being. They just might be at a 1 or a 2, barely noticeable, almost indistinguishable. So how a being who is at a 1 versus someone who's at a 50 operate is going to be quite different. It's going to vary quite a lot. But it doesn't mean that individual is soulless if they have a very low potential. It just means there's a lot more room for that vessel to shift. And it's possible that instance of consciousness represented through that figure in that form might not reach maturity, might not grow past that potential. It's possible. But even that is still adding texture to the story, because in every story there's always bystanders. There's always the crowd. There's always those around. There's always the masses. So everyone has their role to play. So I don't really like using that terminology because it does feel very separating. And from what I've seen within people talking about that, it leads to like an elitist perspective of like, oh, that's a soulless person, or even saying things like NPC, non-player character. I get the terminology and what it describes, and I'm not saying that we can't use that term or generalize in that way. However, I don't think that there's anybody that is void of all potential for consciousness to enter. Everyone has that potential. Everyone has that ability. Whether we choose to open it or not is up to us. So that would be my take just on that description in general. And then more specifically on the advice around, a friend that he feels drained around. I mean, I don't think we really need any other answers from anyone else to describe that, other than like you feel how that feels when you are around this individual. And sure, we can go to someone who can maybe identify what chakras it's affecting more distinctly, but just be mindful or aware that this can, this can be a helpful piece of guidance, and it can also be taking away from your own discernment and your own barometer on like, is this a good fit or not? Do I feel alignment here? And if something's a drain consistently, that's a pretty good indication that for whatever reason, the divine is leading you perhaps away from that, or to cause some shift. Maybe it's draining because there's a conversation that I'm not having. When we're not honest with whomever we're around, if we have feelings or thoughts and we're not sharing them, then that becomes a draining situation because we're exerting so much energy to try and preserve this facade. We're being false. We're pretending. And that takes a lot of energy. So it's not always to say and blame the other for creating that. And in fact, it's never the other's responsibility to do anything about. We just notice and observe what is happening and make moves to shift that energy if we need to. And so if it needs to have that conversation, if it needs to physically move away, if it needs to set boundaries in a certain way, or how whatever that looks like, that's the drive that's moving me forward to make that change, so that I'm not just stewing in the muck, not staying in that sticky spot. So yeah, that would be more my approach with that, other than just kind of labeling an individual as soulless and saying, be careful, they're draining you. Because obviously you have some care. I mean, you've been friends with this individual for a reason, and maybe they're bringing you a catalyst. They are bringing you a catalyst, but it's what is the catalyst for? Is it to have you find your voice within this relationship, to be clear with something, to set a boundary? Is it to shift and move away? Is it to find your internal power to know this? I'm just throwing out possibilities. I don't know. But yeah, that to me is a better approach than just to say, your friend has no soul, and just kind of label it that way. It seems very dismissive, and and it leads to that sort of elitist perspective of, I'm better than this person because I have a soul, and they don't, and all that kind of stuff. There is no other. Remember that. There is no other. There is no other. They're just all aspects of you. So yeah, that would be my take there. And thanks again for the question, Olaf. And I will pass it off and see if anyone else wants to jump in on anything we've discussed or take us any which way. Thank you. All right. Well, that's probably a good time to start wrapping up. I do need to wrap up here in about 15 minutes anyway. If anyone has any closing comments or things they want to get in real quickly before we do end, you're more than welcome to interrupt me. But with that said, we'll just start moving to the song lyrics for the ones I'm going to play us out with. Let me pull that up. So the first one I'm going to play is a song called Here Is Gone by the Goo Goo Dolls. So you and I got something, but it's all and then it's nothing to me. So all and nothing. This is like defining you and I got something. Who's you and I? Well, this is you. It's really you and you, but it's you and the divine. You and the unseen. You and God. but it's all and then it's nothing. The alpha and the alpha and the omega, beginning and the end, all and nothing. Yeah. But he says yeah, and you'll notice he says it 3 times because the Y is the cup. So yeah is often code for Christ. So you and I, the Christ and I, have something, that divine inspiration. We have something. And I got my defenses. The ego has its defenses. Our sense of identity has its defenses when it comes to your intentions for me. So the Christ lays out the way, and then all of a sudden we come up with these defenses, these excuses, these reasons, these desires, these attachments when it comes to your intentions. So the Christ just wants us to reconnect with the divine. And we wake up in the breakdown. So we wake up in the breakdown, the eucatastrophe, when we break down all the way down to the bottom with the things we never thought we could be. Yeah. So new potential, new evolution, if you will, growth through this experience. We wake up in the breakdown with the things we never thought we could be. It's always new discovery, changing, continuously reforming. And then, I'm not the one who broke you. I'm not the one you should fear. So this is sung from the Christ's perspective. So it switches. I'm not the one who broke you. The Christ isn't the one who broke us. I'm not the one you should fear. We got to move you, darling. I thought I lost you somewhere, but you were never really ever there at all, because there is no you and there is no them. There's no separation between you and Christ. We were never really there at all. And yet we are, and yet we're not at the same time. And I want to get free. Talk to me. I can feel you falling. Like, really, when you listen to the song, just really feel it from the Christ perspective. This is the Christ that's the genie in the bottle. So, and I want to get free. Talk to me. We have to let Christ in. There is no other way. Christ does not force. Christ will not break us from our free will, from our desires. But Christ can say, I want to get free. Talk to me. I can feel you falling. I can feel your pain. And I want it to be all you need. Somehow here is gone. Somehow through this thought process, the here and now, where perfection is all there is gone. We've fallen out of that. I am no solution to the sound of this pollution in me, and I was not the answer, so forget you ever thought it was me. Yeah. So this is sung back, I think, from the original perspective, from like our perspective. I am no solution to the sound of this pollution in me. So the noise, the thoughts, the churn, and I was not the answer, so forget you ever thought it was me. So this is like our feeling of doubt and despair and unworthiness, that we're not worthy of that. But then from the Christ perspective, again, I'm not the one who broke you. I'm not the one you should fear. We got to move you, darling. I thought I lost you somewhere, but you were never really ever there at all. And I want to get free. Talk to me. I can feel you falling. And I want it to be all you need. Somehow here is gone. And I don't need the fallout of all the past, the story, the attachment, the things we've done. It's all forgiven. We have to forgive ourselves in order to move past that. So I don't need the fallout of all the past that's in between us. Water under the bridge. And I'm not holding on. And all your lies weren't enough to keep me here. So all the lies of the ego, all the lies of this iteration of society and what brought us here, they weren't enough to keep Christ contained. Because I want to get free. Talk to me. I can feel you falling. And I want it to be all you need. Somehow here is gone. And then it repeats, I know it's out there and I can feel you falling. I know you're out there. So this is like the love song from the Christ back to us to reconvene. Really beautiful song. So enjoy that one. And then the last one is going to be a song called Better Days. And this is also from the Christ perspective. So, and you ask me what I want this year, and I try to make this kind and clear. So this is us, maybe on like a Christ Mass wish, the bringing in the Christ. You ask me what I want this year, and I try to make this kind and clear. The Word, bringing us the Word. Just a chance that maybe we'll find better days. Because I don't need boxes wrapped in strings and designer love and empty things. Just a chance that maybe we'll find better days. So take these words and sing out loud, the Christ singing to us. Take these words and sing out loud, because everyone is forgiven now. I mean, that, if we could reverberate that onto the whole, everyone just knows they're forgiven. That's power. That's powerful. Because tonight's the night the world begins again. And that's what we're going through. We have to go through this revelation, this realizing what has happened, not to fall into shame or guilt, but to move through it. And moving through it is forgiving ourselves for that. Because tonight's the night the world begins again. I need someplace simple where we could live, and something only you can give. It's very simple. Where we could live, and that's within the temple, within you. And something only you can give, your free will, your surrender, your openness to it. And that's faith and trust and peace while we're alive. So just words are the same. Having that leap, taking that leap of faith, trusting the divine, the peace that passes all understanding. And the one poor child who saved this world. And there's 10 million more who probably could if we all just stopped and said a prayer for them. So the one poor child who saved this world, the Christ essence, the divine child. And there's 10 million more who probably could if we just stopped and said a prayer for them. So we can bring the Christ back to this very powerfully, and that's what we're doing. But this is just a reminder. So take these words and sing out loud, because everyone is forgiven now, because tonight's the night the world begins again. I wish everyone was loved tonight and somehow stop this endless fight. Just a chance that maybe we'll find better days. Because tonight's the night the world begins again. So yeah, that's the song Better Days. I thought it was a very fitting one to end off on, but I love both of these songs very much, and I hope you do as well. And just want to say thank you everyone for joining the show today, for being here with me. And it's always a lot of fun to do. So we'll keep on doing these, and I do plan on doing a watch party tomorrow night. So we'll get that back up and running. And yeah, stay tuned for whatever else comes. We'll just keep on keeping on. So I love you all so very much. Have a wonderful day wherever you are. Enjoy these two songs as we play us out, and take care. We'll see you next time.